Is It Treason by Cho Hee-dae and Han Deok-soo. The Dangers of a Treasonous Power Alliance in the Republic of Korea's Judicial System. Respected listeners, today I aim to provide an in-depth analysis of the historical distortion in the Republic of Korea's judicial system, the crisis it currently faces, and the power structure behind it. This audiobook is not merely political criticism, but examines the fundamental issues our society faces through historical context and structural analysis. In this critical period we face, it is more important than ever to confront the truth and remember the lessons of history. Though it may sometimes be uncomfortable, only truth will set us free. Chapter 1: Historical Errors in Korean Judiciary and Pro-Japanese Remnants. The fundamental problem in the Republic of Korea's judicial system stems from the failure to purge pro-Japanese forces after liberation. While the Syngman-Rhee government superficially established an independent nation, it failed to accomplish the historical task of purging pro-Japanese collaborators. The dissolution of the Special Committee for Punishing Anti-National Activities and the appointment of pro-Japanese collaborators led to a failure to realize justice after liberation, causing serious structural defects within the judicial system. In this situation, the Park Chung-hee regime established the Yushin system under the pretext of anti-communism and economic development based on pro-Japanese military personnel and bureaucrats. In this process, the judiciary became a tool of political power, and citizens' basic rights were seriously violated. Interestingly, these political choices, made under the guise of national development, paradoxically became structural shackles hindering our society's development, like cancer cells that grow rapidly in the short term but eventually kill their host. Growth that sacrificed principles of justice and rule of law ultimately became factors impeding our society's healthy development. Particularly notable are the commonalities between the Syngman-Rhee and Park Chung-hee regimes. Both regimes suppressed judicial independence and justified authoritarian rule under the pretext of national security and economic development. This was a fatal error, like ignoring foundation work when building a house. No matter how splendidly a building is constructed, if the foundation is unsound, it will eventually collapse. Chapter 2: Pro-Japanese descendants' control of the judiciary and its impact. Despite 75 years having passed since liberation, the reality is that the Republic of Korea's judiciary is still largely controlled by descendants of individuals with pro-Japanese backgrounds. This is not mere coincidence, but stems from the systematic maintenance of informal influence through marriage and personal connections. This connection-centered judicial structure has collapsed the fair personnel system, and citizens have come to perceive the judiciary as a protection mechanism for vested interests. This has seriously damaged the essential values of the judiciary, realizing justice and protecting citizens' rights. Here we discover history's irony. The legacy of forces that oppressed our nation during the Japanese colonial period continues to exert influence through our society's core institutions even after liberation. Like a virus hijacking a host's cellular mechanisms to replicate itself, pro-Japanese remnants in the judiciary have reproduced their influence within the system. A particularly serious problem is that this structure extends beyond simple connections to the inheritance of ways of thinking and values. Colonial-era methods of legal interpretation and application, patterns of judgments conforming to power, and tendencies to prioritize the interests of the ruling class over citizens have been covertly passed down. Chapter 3: Revival of Yushin Judiciary. Analysis of the Cho Hee-dae Yoon Seok-yeol system. In 2025, we are witnessing a surprising historical parallel. The cooperative relationship between Supreme Court Chief Justice Cho Hee-dae and President Yoon Seok-yeol reminds us of the relationship between the judiciary and executive branch during the Yushin era. This is not merely a coincidence, but a phenomenon based on structural similarities. As court rulings favorable to the Yoon Seok-yeol regime repeatedly emerge, judicial neutrality is being seriously damaged. In particular, the connection with Judge Ji Gui-yeon and politically biased judgments in the case of Representative Lee Jae-myung strengthen concerns that the judiciary is becoming a tool of political power. Looking at this phenomenon cynically, despite 30 years having passed since democratization, our judicial system is repeating the same bugs, like outdated software. The surface interface may have changed, but the core algorithm still contains errors. Interestingly, this revival of Yushin Judiciary shows systematic structural continuity, not merely personal inclinations or coincidence. Just as DNA is passed down through generations, authoritarian judicial practices have survived the waves of democratization and are now reappearing before us. Chapter 4. Political context and meaning of the 2025 Lee Jae-myung Supreme Court ruling. On April 30th, 2025, the Supreme Court en banc made a decision to overturn and remand Lee Jae-myung's false information dissemination case with a guilty verdict. The most notable feature of this ruling is its timing and speed. This ruling, made exceptionally quickly in just 34 days at a time, when the presidential election is imminent, clearly contains political implications. Beyond a simple legal judgment, this ruling can be interpreted as a political act in which the Supreme Court judicially neutralizes a strong opposition presidential candidate by making judgments favorable to the regime's flow. Removing Lee Jae-myung means removing the force that the existing vested interest alliance sees as most threatening beyond just one politician. In this situation, Prime Minister Han Deok-soo's resignation and presidential candidacy announcement on May 1st, 2025, is the product of political calculation that is difficult to view as coincidence. With a career as a national administrator, Kim and Chang network, and as a representative of diplomatic economic elite groups, Han Deok-soo is the most uncontroversial card that existing vested interest forces, conglomerates, conservative bureaucrats, pro-Japanese assets, pro-American and pro-Japanese diplomatic forces, can back in a situation where Lee Jae-myung has been removed. This is like an elaborate chess game. First remove the opponent's strongest piece, the queen. Then strategically position your own piece. The will of the people and democratic values do not seem to be included in this game's rules. Chapter 5. The nature and dangers of the treasonous power alliance. The power structure combination represented by Supreme Court Chief Justice Hee-dae and former Prime Minister Han Deok-soo simultaneously pursues two goals: domestic control and ensuring diplomatic interests. Hee-dae's judicial removal capability and Han Deok-soo's administrative succession role form a power structure similar to the early structure of Park Chung-hee's Yushin system. The treasonous meaning of Han Deok-soo's presidential candidacy is clearly revealed in his past actions. Advocacy for Fukushima contaminated water, reduction of Dokdo defense drills, and weak attitude regarding Sado mine registration are representative examples of submissive diplomatic policy toward Japan. Additionally, the Kim and Chung business world connection strengthens a structure that prioritizes multinational capital interests over domestic capital. In this context, Lee Jae-myung's welfare for the people and anti-conglomerate reform is perceived as a threat to shake up their structure and thus becomes a target for removal. That is, it can be seen as an attempt to maintain a foreign-friendly structure by using the judiciary and administration to block the will of the people in order to maintain power. This is like treating the nation as private property. Just as a corporate board might run a company for their own benefit rather than shareholders, the current power structure prioritizes the interests of themselves and external forces over those of citizens. Even more serious is that this structure goes beyond simple political benefit to exhibit a treasonous character that surrenders national sovereignty and citizens' interests to external forces. This can be called a modern form of unequal treaty. Chapter 6. The necessity and specific direction of Korean judicial reform. The distortion of Korean judiciary stems from the following 5 problems. First, political neutrality is seriously damaged as regimes appoint the head of the judiciary. Second, the hereditary structure of judicial power is solidified through the network of pro-Japanese descendants. Third, public trust has seriously declined due to repeated politically biased judgments. Fourth, judges' principal judgments are being suppressed due to internal personnel lineup. Fifth, the fairness of law is fundamentally collapsing due to Yushin remnants and judgment opacity. The direction for reform to solve these problems is as follows. The independence of the judiciary head should be guaranteed through transparency in the Supreme Court Chief Justice appointment procedure and strengthened National Assembly consent. Historical wrongs should be corrected through investigation of former pro-Japanese legal professionals' descendants and strengthening judicial ethical standards. Fairness in the judicial process should be secured through system transparency via judgment disclosure, automated assignment systems, and AI assistance introduction. Power dispersion and checks should be achieved through separation of judicial administration and judgment authority, and securing independence for the Personnel Committee. Citizen participation and oversight in the judiciary should be strengthened through expansion of citizen participation trials and establishment of online disclosure platforms. Such reforms require a fundamental transformation of judicial culture and consciousness beyond simple institutional changes. It's time for a fundamental change, like formatting a computer and installing a new operating system. Chapter 7. Lessons from History and Biblical Wisdom. History provides us with important lessons. Syngman Rhee's dissolution of the Special Committee for Punishing Anti-National Activities, Park Chung-hee's Yushin Constitution, the inheritance of pro-Japanese remnants, the current political judicial collusion. All these flows are repeating because there was no proper purging. The Bible provides clear wisdom about this situation. Proverbs 29:4 says, "The king gives stability to the land by justice, but one who takes bribes overthrows it." This verse emphasizes that righteous judgment is the foundation of the nation. Also, Isaiah 1:17 teaches, "Learn to do good, seek justice, correct oppression, bring justice to the fatherless, and plead the widow's cause." This reminds us that the essential mission of the judicial system is to protect the weak and realize justice. Amos 5:24's saying, "But let justice roll down like waters, and righteousness like an ever-flowing stream," emphasizes that justice should not be temporary, but continuously realized. Leviticus 19:15 says, "You shall do no injustice in court. You shall not be partial to the poor or defer to the great, but in righteousness shall you judge your neighbor." This emphasizes the importance of fairness in trials and avoiding bias. These biblical teachings present fundamental principles that remain valid for modern judicial systems. True justice and righteousness are truths that transcend time. Chapter 8. The Role of Citizens in Republic of Korea Judicial Reform. What we need now is to remember, rectify, and start anew. Judicial trust begins with fairness. Judiciary without citizens, judiciary not for citizens, has lost its reason for existence. Judicial reform is not simply a problem for politicians or legal professionals. It becomes possible only when all citizens remember historical lessons, face current problems, and demand change for the future. The Bible says in Micah 6:8, "He has told you, O man, what is good, and what does the Lord require of you but to do justice, and to love kindness, and to walk humbly with your God." This is a fundamental principle, applicable to both individuals and society. Republic of Korea's judicial reform can be achieved through the realization of justice, kindness, and humility based on these biblical values. When we all remember and practice these values, true change will begin. Conclusion. Choice at a historical turning point. The Republic of Korea now stands at a critical historical turning point. We stand at a crossroads of whether to repeat past errors or move toward a new future. The Bible says in Deuteronomy 30:19, "I call heaven and earth to witness against you today, that I have set before you life and death, blessing and curse. Therefore choose life, that you and your offspring may live." This reminds us of the importance of the choice our society faces. Judicial independence and fairness, realization of people's sovereignty, and independence from foreign powers are not simple political slogans, but essential elements for our society's survival and prosperity. We must face the current crisis, learn from past lessons, and apply biblical wisdom to make the right choice for the future.